Yeah, that looks pretty good.
All right. Shit.
All right.
Shit.
We made it.
Yeah, we kind of made it.
We made it back.
John was saying we should have called Fry at technical support. We kind of did.
They never answer any questions. They take too long. Every time I get a response from those guys, it's just like it's so long and complicated. I can't understand what the hell the guy's saying. Why don't they just say yes or no to my question? That would be.
Did you try the gear page? Hi everyone. We're doing some different things here on the stream regarding the sound. That's what was taking us a few minutes. So
we actually do everything is different.
Yeah. Because we're back to wanting to play some guitar into the stream. So when we were trying to troubleshoot it before we got on here, I know some of you guys know StreamYard, which is the client that we use. No, we're not using the echo cancellation. So, but we still got some of that weird phasey MP3 guitar sound. So, yeah.
But not all the time. It sounds great, and then it just goes wee, and then
yeah. And Chris is saying you can definitely hear the room, and we had to turn off the background noise. Whatever, the reduced background noise control, because that was really affecting the sound of the guitar. So bear with us.
Actually, while we're talking, I can turn that off.
Okay.
And that will help.
Okay. It might, did you reset the levels after you?
No, I didn't mess with the levels.
All right. Well, we'll turn that on and see what happens.
I don't mess with level, man.
Yes, you do.
I do, actually. Liar! Liar! Audio. I'm gonna just do this live. Okay.
We're doing it live.
Reduce. Okay.
Reduce mic background. All right.
Chris, so, did that do anything?
Yeah. Do we have less background noise? BB23 King. What does the 23 stand for? Curious. But hi. Name of your cover band, Background Noise? I kind of dig that. Background Noise.
Oh,
weren't you in a band called, I don't know why this is popping into my head. Weren't you in the band called The Pencils or something?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Everybody was
the fucking Pencils.
Everybody was doing the bands,
Sure. The Police.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and I wanted the most. I just went, I could do a lot with this. It's the most mundane, name.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw others. I saw others later that were even more mundane. But I was kind of on a roll about mundane names, and I thought I'm going to make the most mundane name, and I'm going to market the hell out of it. So I was working for a printing company.
Okay.
And they were doing some stuff for a church, and I had to make a delivery to the church.
Okay.
This printed material for the church. And as I was talking to the guy, we were in the church, and I was looking at the pews, and they had the pew pencils in there.
Pew.
I said, Pepe Le Pew.
Hey, Amanda.
And I went, pencils. And the guy goes, what? And I said, where do you get those pencils made? He goes, oh, there's some company in Ohio. They do it for everybody. I said, can you give me their information? So I contacted this company that brands pencils for different pens and pencils and stuff.
Yeah.
I ordered 1,000 pencils, those little pew pencils with no eraser on them, little orange things.
Yeah.
And had them printed.
Golf scorecard.
Yeah, and had the pencils printed on it in black.
Oh. How much did that run you?
Oh, it was practically nothing. It was so cheap, it was ridiculous.
I think it cost me
$20 or something. Yeah, we threw them at the audience. We gave them away to people, and they would go, "What's this? What's this?" You came to see a band called The Pencils, and the guy gave you a pencil. I said, "It's a pencil."
You pencil?
Oh! And then, like, the next time we played a gig, there was a few girls that had made them into earrings, and
Oh, wow.
it was a lot of fun.
Hot damn.
So yeah, it turned a mundane name into a non-mundane name. But there was a lot of stupid names going around at the time. Just before the things really changed, before the punk rock and new wave and all that really got going, just in that period there where Ricky Lee Jones was still the hottest thing on the planet, and I go down to the record store every week and see what was new, and they had all the new releases
Yeah.
on the table when you walked into Tower, for example. They had all the new releases, and they had the new Ricky Lee Jones album and the new Tom Waits album, and they had this album cover for this really dorky looking band. They were really mundane looking, average looking guys that could be in just like any old garage band. Nothing special, boring looking guys.
So they should have came out in the 70s
Yeah.
when you could still be like ugly.
Yeah.
Be
And the
a
name of
rock
the
star.
band was Susan.
What?
Yeah. I'm like going,
What?
that
I've never
name
heard of
so
that.
does not fit the absence of the image of this
I thought you were at least going to name someone that I sort of tangentially
No.
have heard of.
No, these guys,
Susan?
I
Whoa!
never
Talk
heard-
about a flop.
yeah, such a flop. They just like went right into the black hole as fast as they possibly could.
Wow. BB23 King, 23 for MJ. So squeezing in a little Michael Jordan in BB King.
That's cute.
I'm just thinking of BB King like, taking off from the foul line. Yeah, they probably did look like Weezer. Did they look like Weezer?
They didn't even look
Susan?
remotely as cool as Weezer, and that's saying something.
Because Weezer owned the dorkery.
They look like a bunch
Yeah.
of guys that all failed the Steely Dan audition. You know what I mean?
That's what everybody in the
Yeah.
70s looked like.
Everybody in the band looked like they failed the Steely Dan. So these guys were even worse than that.
Oh, man. Some point. I'm gonna-
How's everybody doing?
Yeah, how's everybody doing? The 4th of July, it's hot.
Mark Hamstra, I was talking, Erico and I were just talking about you yesterday.
What were you talking?
We were talking about his book.
He has a book?
Yeah, he's an artist in New York.
Oh, man. Give him some
Would I
give him some
say,
love.
should I say an avant-garde artist? He's very interesting. He's a modern art guy. He's in New York, of course. He started showing up in my Instagram feed because he was using one of our amps, and he and his wife, I hope I'm not mixing you up with somebody else. I'm pretty sure you're talking about
Mark's like, no,
not it. That's not me. But Hamstra or Hofstra?
Let's find out. Mark, can you?
Yeah, we're about to find out.
This will be great if you screw
Yeah.
it up. Anyway, well, that's not me.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So the name is awfully close.
So, Mark, Steve and Erica were not talking.
We weren't
about
talking
you
about you.
last
We were
week,
talking
but we're
about-
talking about you now.
Might have been Mark Hofstra.
Mark, what's one fun fact about you that you can volunteer to the group, and we'll talk about that for several minutes. That's hysterical. So how you doing, man? You seem like kind of jovial. Good
I think
spirits?
I think I should just say I'm doing great,
Hey,
because I don't have any other answer that is going to be any more enlightening.
Oh,
I knew it was Michael. It was Michael, wasn't Mark. Okay, so who I was talking about was
strike 1, 2, and 3.
Michael Haftka, who sort of reminded me of Mark Hofstra. And
Mark.
so just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that
Oh, that's very
Mark
cool.
does. This is like
Michael.
This is Michael. Where's the camera? There it is. Okay. Stuff like that.
Wild.
So anyway, this is a This is the guy who,
How'd you wind up with that book?
well, he and his wife get together and they were making these videos of interesting off the wall musical explorations. She plays a theremin,
Oh,
and
okay.
he's kind of a follower of David Torn, so he's
Right on.
doing, he's influenced by Torn and
Cool.
doing, sounds, and they just do these explorations. And he was using our stuff, and he had an amp that needed servicing, and he couldn't find anybody in New York to get it taken care of. So he sent it to us. We sent it back to him, and he was like, finally. And then, so we started following each other on Instagram, and then I commented on some of the pieces that he was posting that he was
all right.
working on,
Yeah.
and I was just taken with the stuff. And then one day this book showed up at the shop.
Oh, really?
So he sent it as a gift,
Oh,
and it was really nice.
well, our Mark here is a Silicon Valley software engineer, so that's very cool. So he might not make a book of avant art for you, but he could probably design a better graphic interface
Yeah,
for the
really.
IR loader for you. I don't know what your specialty is, but yeah. Oh, Brendan just scored a Sig X. Dude, that's nice. And then, yeah, apparently you did put the shout out. It's you doing?
I'm on a green kick right
Yeah?
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grabbed something that was green.
I owned a home on a Sumac Drive
Oh.
at one point.
Huh.
Yeah. So not so fun fact. So you're doing well?
Yeah. I got.
You're enjoying life?
I'm focusing on the color green for some reason. So I got some green shoes. I got
Do you have
another
better
green
slope
shirt,
stuff?
and this was from like an earlier Sumac outing. I don't even remember when. Probably 5 years old, maybe more. I don't know. I love Sumac.
Yeah.
They
great.
are. Listening to Sumac music is like, it's like standing on the edge of the caldera of a volcano and just listening to the sound of that and getting sort of taken away into another reality.
Very, very different band, but not unlike the experience of Sun.
Yeah.
Just like this is rearranging every molecule in my being, just
Yeah.
standing here. It's that
Yeah.
kind of experience.
Except they got a drum.
yeah. And they don't wear the druid.
Yeah, they don't wear the druid outfit.
Which, hey, man, I love
that. And Aaron is the vocalist, so they have a vocalist, and they rearrange molecules in a different way, but their set is a lot like Sun in the sense that the set begins and ends with this continuous performance.
Mm-hmm.
There's no breaks.
Yeah.
They're different songs, though. The song, instead of stopping a piece and then starting another piece, they just morph into another piece.
So it's kind of disorienting in a way. Like it's supposed to, I think, be somewhat trance-like. Like what the
It's
hell
very
happened to me?
trance-like.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself going, oh, they're somewhere else now.
Yeah.
And
When did that happen?
And you have to try to like catch up, I guess, or else you're on their ride. David Torn is a lot like that, where you go to see him play, and I just go to see David Torn play because he's a great friend and I love the guy and I love his music, and so I go to see him. But what happens is I don't go and see him and appreciate his playing and his sound and the fact that they're using our stuff. It's not like that. It's like, I'm glad that he's out playing, and I'm glad I get to see it. And then I realize that the set is over, and Erica went with me one time, and it was the first time she had seen it, and it's not her kind of thing at all. But
Was it the
mint?
oh, the Mint?
Is it the mint?
Or what was it what was the place over in Little Tokyo that when the Blue Whale?
Oh, Blue Whale, another kind of a similar kind of thing, but no, this was that the Blue Whale was just him solo.
Yeah, because I saw you at that show.
Yeah, the Mint performance, he had a drummer and a sax player.
Oh, okay.
And so she went along to go along, and what she ended up doing is getting on the ride, and then when as we were leaving, she said that wasn't like watching a musical performance. That was like being taken somewhere by aliens to another planet and then being delivered back to where you were safely, so you could go home and process it. You know,
another musician that I got
I love that kind of music.
Oh, look at this!
Ooh.
Wow! Thank you. Special delivery.
I thought I turned off the AC, but apparently I didn't because it's still running.
It's not.
Ah, all right. So this is, and I quote, not a margarita.
Oh, I love this.
And I could.
Thank you, Erico. Ooh, hopefully I didn't peak the beat. Guys, okay, I want to comment on this smoky thing. There's something about the graphics driver. Steve's using a different computer to power this whole thing tonight, and we noticed it too. This was another part of the technical stuff that we were trying to solve. We were like, is there some sort of filter that got turned on or something? But yeah, this hazy smoky thing, we see it too. Have no idea what the hell it is, but he is running the whole shebang on a different computer tonight, so I think that's what it is. Yeah, exactly, Brendan. Have you heard of this artist, incredible guitar player? I discovered him around the same time that I got into Torn. In fact, he was on ECM at the time. He's out of Minneapolis. He's called Steve Tibbetts. Do you know Steve Tibbetts? Man, there's this record called The Fall of Us All.
I love it already.
And it's like really intense gamelan percussion, really long form compositions. But the way he puts his thing together is like screaming fuzz strat through a Marshall. But then when you turn around, like, wait a minute, it's an acoustic guitar. How did that happen? And it's so dreamlike. Like, it's not, here's a part and then I quit with this overdub and then I change the sound. It's this through line that runs through all of the tunes where he's morphing in and out of these two voices. And it's incredible. I highly recommend Steve Tibbetts. And that album in particular was the one that I got into him on. Oh, now you're messing with a good thing.
Well, now that the Danny says that the video and audio are slightly out of sync, and so I turned off. Now that the AC fan is off, I turned off that noise reduction thing to see if that made any difference to the synchronization. So,
okay.
Danny, let me know if you notice anything different in the way of an improvement.
The potato filter is on.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So probably the next show we do, I'm going to have yet another new computer, but it's going to be new.
Okay.
So I'm going through different things, trying to just refine it like I always am, and some things get better. One thing I will tell you is, like, in here with the monitors and everything, it's all in sync, and there's no delays and garbage that's going on besides that. So yeah, there's a little bit of a filter on the video part, but.
No, he's going to Windows 95.
Yes, exactly. I'm going back.
Oh, you got a birthday coming up, Amanda. Awesome.
Happy birthday.
You ready? Happy birthday. No, let's
Birthday.
not do that. It'll hurt our ears. It'll be bad. Then she'll hate us forever. Happy birthday.
So somebody scored a Sig X, did he say?
Yeah, I think it was Brandon. Got a Sig X. And then, but wait a minute. Hold on. Did you say you got a Sig? You got a Sig X and you got a. Sorry, my eyes suck.
Yeah.
What did you say? Yeah, I love that. It looks smoky. You using Vista?
I'm using whatever this is.
Okay. So Brendan got the Sig X. Braxel got a Friedman Jose today. So it's like big happy new amp week for the peeps.
Ah, awesome. Awesome.
Did you get any new amps this week?
I did. I'm not going to
build any new amps this week?
Did I what?
Did you build any new amps this week? Oh, you're being quiet.
My processor is operating not at its peak because
Whoa, Steve got a GPDIR yesterday. It's on. Everybody be buying stuff.
Yeah, Steve Voss. Again, we have you to thank for whatever this drink is. I'm told it's not a margarita, but it does have the tequila in it. The
one that he
the Ocho, the one that
laid on you?
the one that you so kindly bombed onto us. So thanks again.
That is delicious.
No, the way you said it, the way you said, did you build any amps this week? In my mind, I heard, did you build any amps this week? No. Did you try to build any amps this week? Yes.
So it's like a stand-in for like a parent?
Oh no, it's the scene from the History of the World, where they're in Rome, and the Mel Brooks character is like he's the orator.
Yeah.
And he's out of work, and so he goes to the unemployment office.
Oh, I love that
and
scene.
Maude Adams is the
out of work comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you bullshit this week? No. Did you try to bullshit this week? Yes.
We played that clip on the show once upon a time. Remember
it
that?
just never sees it. I never get tired of that. Never ever get tired of that. If you've ever been to an unemployment office and had to answer those obnoxious questions in person, it's just there's nothing like it.
I never have because I've never had a real job. I've always done music stuff, and I don't think I qualify for shit. The video's not matching the audio. Oh, that's awesome. So we got like some bad overdub action.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh well.
All right. Well, wow, that's gonna suck for playing. Okay. Well, maybe we'll do a part 2 when we have our shit together.
Or not.
Or not.
Maybe we'll never have our shit together. We haven't gotten it together yet. So what?
Or maybe.
What expectation does anybody have that we're ever going to get our shit together?
Yeah, we can do a part 2.
We haven't done it yet.
Actually, we have.
I'll tell you what. The most we
quit
had it
being late.
together is when we drank ourselves right to the floor, and that
I
was,
wouldn't have remembered that anyway.
Yeah, well, that's because you lost.
Well, you know, that's funny because I was talking about that earlier today. Like, remember when this show used to just be a drinking game?
Yeah,
Basically.
we should probably go back to that.
Like, that scares me now. Like, we used to get after it on here.
Yeah,
A little bit.
Well, I think we all got so busy being, with our productive little lives that we decided to just go on that roll for a while. But so Brendan says everything looks fine on his end. So maybe it's Maybe,
Who knows?
so maybe the person who said it was a little out of sync should update from Windows 95 to at least Windows 98.
Okay. That's funny, Amanda. Okay, I think there are some questions on here before we get into the Take two. Before we get into the GPDI stuff, let me go.
New amps.
Yeah.
And
if you got any new amps and if you built any new amps.
I got a new amp, but I'm not going to talk about it this time.
Okay.
But it's kind of fun, and it'll be a conversation for later.
Okay.
Did I build any new amps? No. We built a lot of stuff. I don't personally build them, but we sure built and shipped a lot of stuff. Well, every month is like that now.
Ham sandwich makers?
Just pounding stuff out. We shipped a lot of GPDIs. We shipped a lot of power stations. We shipped a lot of other power stations. We shipped every ZMAX we could possibly make until they were gone.
Sweet.
And then we shipped a big shipment to the UK, and another big shipment is leaving on Monday for Germany, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. We got a notification from DHL that they're no longer making any deliveries to Israel because of the hostilities. And then about a week later, we got a notification from DHL saying, okay, the shipments to Israel have resumed.
Oh, wow.
So we have a dealer in Israel. So
on off.
yeah, it was like, yeah, we're going to ship you next week. No, we're not. And oh, yes, we are. And
sounds like tariffs.
it's not even about the tariffs.
No. It's like the tariffs.
It's like the tariff
yeah.
in that you don't know what the hell's going on from one day to the next.
Yeah.
So we're all doing this. Like, what we do is we start the week off with like 5 potential objectives, and we're going to get 3 of them done, but I can't tell you which 3 of the 5 it's going to be.
Because everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face.
That's right, right. What did John Lennon say? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So the shipment that's going to Germany is not going to be subject to any tariffs, because the tariffs have been paused. They've been put on hold for shipments going to Germany. So Germany is not imposing any tariffs on shipments from the U.S. right at the moment.
Oh.
So the German, our German agent just bought as much inventory as he could afford in one shipment, because he did it 2 times in a row, and then he sold everything he got, and then he did it again. He's going to keep doing it to try to get as much stuff through the pipeline before the tariff hits.
Yeah.
So that's kind of putting a strain on us, because it's a good thing in that we're producing more, but it's a drag because we also have the commitments to all of our other dealers and partners, so it's just insane. But we're trying to accommodate everybody as much as possible. There's one dealer in Canada that says, I can't really order anything right now because of the 25% tariff. And another dealer in Canada is going, no, it's not 25%, and it's not really affecting that much, and we need to reorder again. So one dealer is saying one thing, and another dealer is saying an entirely different thing. But the guy that's actually selling the stuff regularly is the one that is benefiting from the fact that I think that he knows more about the ins and outs, the fine points of which specific items are tariffed, because even with the product that we ship to Canada, some pieces are tariffed at a different rate than other pieces. Like the ZMAX is at a different tariff rate than the Deliverance.
Why is that? Do you know?
Because somebody with an ice pick poked somebody else in the eye with it, but it was only one eye. And
That's interesting.
there is no knowing why these things are the way they are.
But you're cranking. That's the point.
We're
You guys
just
are cranking.
cranking.
And you're feeling good.
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And every week is, by the time we get to Friday, it's like, thank God, but really? It's not Tuesday, it's Friday? It's just,
yeah.
so we're all, every single feeling is kind of balanced with an opposite feeling at the same time. It's insane.
Well, Erico is smiley too, so it seemed like you guys are doing well. A bunch of people.
Because
in
all
the
you
chat.
can do is smile and just keep your head down and move forward.
Yeah.
Because the minute you stop and think how crazy everything is, you freeze. So
Oh yeah. The moment
You
you
just
become
do this.
self-aware.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I remember, that Stevie Ray Vaughan said something about like not thinking while he plays.
Yeah.
And like the moment I start thinking, I get in trouble. And it's that self-awareness. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm killing it, or oh, I might suck, or oh, that thinking about yourself, and it's all over. You wipe out.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's a thing that I do frequently is wipe out.
That's my whole life.
Performing in front of people. Like if I'm so busy getting my act together, remembering my parts and stuff like that, and just like trying to get there and get through it and leave, I'm great. But if I start thinking about
Let's be good.
yeah,
Let's be
I
good
want to
tonight.
be really good tonight. And let's see, last Tuesday was a really good night. So what did I do that last Tuesday night that I could remember to do tonight? And if you do that, all is lost. You just
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
You're not in the zone.
Totally. That book Flow is all about that. I think about this every day. I try and get into that flow. It's the right amount of work that your prefrontal cortex, your monkey mind, is absorbed to the degree where you're not overheating, but you're just engrossed to the point where you're not the part that considers yourself and thinks about yourself and all your bullshit disappears.
Yeah.
It goes and takes a coffee break in the
Yeah,
back, and you're just in the task, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's the
well,
greatest
that's
thing.
sort of like the way the multiple personality syndrome works, where one personality takes a seat, and the other one takes over.
Like multiple personalities, like that syndrome
Yeah,
or disorder, or
yeah, MPD, yeah.
that's like an intense defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And the wild thing is when you study all of these sorts of things, when you first start looking into these disorders, it's like, wow, that's intense, and it seems as if it's an alien thing that's visited upon people who are afflicted with it, but everybody has aspects of these things. It's just the spectrum, where you are on the spectrum, to the degree that you experience them.
Yeah. Well, Bates says we're all wrong about it, so let's just move on then.
Bates.
So we don't want to confuse anybody.
What was I going to say? Okay, so you're doing well. Everybody's buying amplifiers. That's good. And we're going to talk about the GPDI.
Yeah.
So, what a wonderful piece of kit.
You being a person who actually glommed onto the very first one as soon as it was available, you're kind of my go-to as far as how effective it is, or how functional it is, or if it's functional. I mean, I do a lot of things that I think should be done a certain way, but at the end of the day, I don't determine whether anybody else thinks that way or not. I just think this seems like a solution to this problem, and it seems like a good way to put a couple, 2 or 3 solutions to 2 or 3 problems in one little piece of kit. And that all seems to make sense to me. But I know better. I know it doesn't make sense until the end users think it makes sense. And that's sort of always been the MO.
So let's talk about that for a second. Let's answer two questions. What is the GPDI? And when you're talking about the problems that it's supposed to address, what are those problems, or that problem, if it is plural?
Initially, the idea was that we had this preamp, the GP3, and
So a preamp.
yeah, and it had a analog cab sim in it, and it had a little internal output stage. It would not drive a speaker, but it had a tube driving a little transformer.
Yeah.
And that came out in 1999. So it had that little phase inverter type circuit driving a little output transformer its only job was to sound like a phase inverter driving an output transformer, to sound like a power tube, a push-pull circuit driving a output transformer like a regular tube amp would.
Okay.
And so
this is like extra sauce for a preamp.
Yeah, yeah.
Like to
and
take
it was
the preamp design to the next level.
Yeah, it was basically the first 0-watt amp.
Okay.
And I envisioned that as being something that you could put in a rack and run as a preamp and actually get amp-like sounds out of it as opposed to preamp-like sounds.
Right, right.
That you had a pretty complex, this was like the end of the refrigerator rack era.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be an amp that, instead of having to slave an amp into a load and then run that into your rack system, the preamp could do that and emulate that well enough that you didn't need to haul amps around, especially the loads that people were using on heads to slave them weren't that sophisticated anyway. So this was actually a better sounding solution than that. And then later on, it became, we could just take the essential things that the GP3 did really well and put them in a little box that you could sit on a desk and plug directly into an audio interface and record directly into that.
Was this inspired by the kidney pod, or these things were starting to happen at that point?
Well, the pod was already out a few years before that.
Yeah, so you're thinking,
I'm just thinking, I'm so sick of hearing people talk about how accurate the AC30 in the pod is, because I went and I got a pod and I plugged it in and I listened to it and I went, people think this is the AC30 sound because it says AC30 on it, and that's about as much of an AC30 that it sounded like.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys in the development department at Line 6 at the time were saying, well, we model an AC30, and yeah, great. But the software part of it was at a very low stage of development at that time. So, it didn't... I had a different perspective on all of that than all the salespeople and the marketing people were pushing.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing that it sounds like this,
mm-hmm.
and my impression was it doesn't inspire me in any way like playing that particular amp does. In other words, how I react to it physically and emotionally playing wise.
Yeah,
there's nothing in that little pod shaped thing that gives me that experience.
mm-hmm.
So I took issue with all of that because I'm looking at it from the perspective of the playing experience and the feedback and playing the guitar and the amp as an instrument and how all that feels and how it makes you feel when you're playing, as opposed to well, it sounds pretty close, like what good does that do? It doesn't. I started really in those days developing the idea that it didn't fucking matter what it sounded like if it wasn't a great experience to play.
Oh, sure, sure.
And I think that's actually really coming full circle now, because more and more people are discovering old vintage amps that have been under the radar for a really long time, because the famous were the ones that everybody paid attention to.
Sure.
But now people are paying attention to oddball vintage amps and oddball old amps that have these unique characteristics that nobody ever really talked about before, but now they're interested in. And they're interested in it because it's a new playing experience, not necessarily just a sound. So taking the GP3 and turning it into a little box that you could plug into a recording console and experience actually playing a tube amp, as opposed to trying to emulate yet another interpretation of what a JTM45 or an AC30 or a Fender Twin sounds like. I took the position that it doesn't matter what it sounds like, it matters if it's fun to play and gets the job done and feels great doing it. And so that was the first job of the GPDI, was to take the main guts of the GP3 and shrink it down and make an evolution of the output stage so that it actually would drive a speaker. So an output transformer that would drive a speaker and would behave like a tube power amp driving an output transformer and all of that. And it didn't have to have 3 channels. It didn't have to have 8 million knobs. It basically needed to be just some little tool that you dial it in for a particular sound and record with that, and then you dial in something else for a different sound and record with that. Just like when you would be using a variety of tube amplifiers to put tracks together. You would do one with a Tweed Champ, or you'd do another one with a deluxe reverb, or you would do something else with a 50-watt Marshall, or loaded down or whatever, or mic'd in another room. You would just do all these things, and I decided that the way to do that and make it efficient and functional and small would be to just give the gain stages, first of all, make it really a tube amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an emulation of a tube amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tube amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
It's got gain, it's got a master volume, it's got tone controls, and it's got distortion characteristics that you can select, and you just have it on your desk, and then you could plug it into a patch bay, or you could just plug your guitar into it, and then you could reach around on the back and connect something to it to route the signal somewhere else. It was going to be a tool, but a very practical, real amplifier tool.
So were you seeing that as I'm referring to when we were talking about it being a problem, or rather a solution for people who were using modelers for tracking at home in environments when they needed to be quiet? Was it mainly thinking about that kind of user?
Yeah, exactly.
Who was using those products, like me,
right?
But who's going, this is great for what it does, but I'm taking a hit where the completion of the electric guitar amp as full instrument circle is, right?
Mm.
So we talk about this a lot. The electric guitar without an amplifier is like half an instrument.
Right.
And the electric guitar cut its teeth for whatever reason. It was tube technology that was around at the time. Mm-hmm. If it had been solid state, we talked about this.
Right.
Maybe solid state would be, what we were weaned on, and that's what, felt like the great stuff. But it wasn't. And for those of us who grew up playing tube amplifiers, when you got into the modeling space, and I use that stuff like crazy, great for what it is, but you're always going, damn, it's not inspiring to play. Yeah. I can get work done, and I can get it done fast, and I can get it done quietly, and the recall is really nice, but I want something that is a tube amplifier.
And I keep looking at this. I kept looking at the development of modeling, thinking, okay, are they going to get it to the point where it actually is something that I do have to be concerned about? And then, so when the more well-developed modelers that started coming out, I started thinking, yeah, I really got to start paying attention to this. At the same time, we're wrapping up the design of the GPDI, and just as that was getting done, people have started paying attention to IRs and impulse responses, and what is that,
right.
and how is that blah 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 much better than an analog cab sim? And I thought, we're behind the curve on this. And then I got a Pod Pro, which was one. I got a Pod Pro and an 11 rack, and there was a third one. I think it was I think it was an AXFX.
No, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an AXFX. It was.
What was the other thing that was around?
Your buddy Chris Campbell, was it?
Oh, Andrew.
Andrew Campbell. He brought over.
But there was another thing out there at the time that maybe you didn't have it, but there was another rack mount. It was black, I think, and it was another modeler.
That was the Pod Pro.
Wasn't the Pod Pro red like the kidney?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It was called. Oh, it was something. One of you guys will remember. But anyway, you got a hold of an acquisition of the Pod Pro.
Not going anywhere now. I'll go blanked out.
Yeah. To your question, asking questions, and we'll get to the questions later on.
Yeah. So.
You keep. I'm gonna find what that was.
I was like going. You know what? The development is like zipping past us.
10 rack.
I said 11 rack, but that was
11
gold.
rack?
11 rack's gold.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I plugged in the AXFX in the same mixer and headphone rig that I was running the GPDI data unit through. And I played a chord and I went, unbelievable. Unbelievable that there's all this momentum and discussion going on about this product. And I'm telling myself, don't get on your high horse or anything, but this GPDI prototype is running circles around this thing that everybody is talking about. And again, it wasn't about the sound, it was the experience of playing an E chord and going, that is not coming out of that. And that's all I cared about.
Mm-hmm.
And then the discussion became, all right, but what are we going to do about transitioning into IRs? Well, I'm not going to worry about that right now because I don't really think that's that big of an argument, because the IR thing, impulse responses are a more well-developed way of replicating a speaker cabinet that's being mic'd.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But if the playing experience and the interaction between the amplifier and the speaker isn't there, you're taking a snapshot of an amp and connecting it to the snapshot of a cabinet. It's not the final piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. It's just another piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And that particular puzzle is lacking in player satisfaction to me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about that when I could say that I could say, okay, well, that's all well and good, but the analog cab is still valid because you can dial it in, number one. Number two, the main thing that you want to do is you want to get rid of those ugly frequencies that either an IR or a cab filter will take care of.
Yeah.
And then you can run with that. And then if you're going to go direct recording and you want to use IRs, you can do it in the DAW. So you're not losing anything, but you're gaining something, especially when I played through a bunch of IRs and modelers in clean settings with IRs, and they just kind of lay flat. You have to like drench them, and that was the thing about all the presets in the 11 rack. They were just drenched with reverb and
Effects.
delay
Yeah, right.
to cover up the fact that they had no dynamic range and no chime.
100%.
So I just thought, oh,
And you had to, for me anyway, it felt like I had to lay into the guitar so much to pull to get the notes still wouldn't pop, but there was none of that. Where the moment that actually I brought it, this is my original GPDI, and the moment that I started playing through this, the notes were leaping off of the fretboard, and I was like, there it is, I'm back.
and how
Right.
old is that piece of tape on the top of there? Is it at least 5
I don't know.
years
You
old?
stuck that on
Probably
there.
5 or 10.
Yeah, I don't.
And like all your gear, it's filled with dust.
Cho Gam.
Chogams.
Did you put that on there?
Yeah.
What the? Did I lend it to you for a NAMM show or something, and then you put my
Yeah,
name on
something like that. Yeah, yeah,
there? I just never took it off.
yeah.
But yeah, there it is.
So I felt sort of vindicated by all of that, and then it did very well. So, then the next thing was going to be, all right, I still feel that the analog cab did not become obsolete, and the reason is because it does do a pretty good job, and it does an especially good job on clean stuff. But the other thing is, and this was validated by people that still have the original one, is that what people told me was, if you sit there and A/B the analog cab and an IR and go through all the different IRs and then go back to the cab, yeah, you can hear that's a cool thing that does, or that's a cool thing that does, and you can debate that all day long. But the thing that really happens is when I'm just sitting down and trying to get work done, and I use an analog cab and I tweak it a certain way, and I think, well, that's probably not exactly what I was shooting for, but it's as good as I can get it right now. But then after an hour of playing, I stopped thinking about it because it was certainly good enough to get the job done.
Right.
And it didn't get in my way, and of course there wasn't any latency associated with it, and the earlier IRs had a lot of latency. So it still had a valid excuse to be there. But you know, there was a lot of clamoring for IRs to be in the next revision of the GPDI, and by that time we had sort of gotten up to speed on it and decided that it was worthwhile doing, so we did that. So that's just a progression on a thing that I felt like, all right, still nobody else is trying to do this particular way. There's Synergy is doing their thing, and the Syn 1, you know, it's kind of similar in that it's a preamp with a high voltage power supply inside, and it's got an analog cab in it, and you know, you can put different. Its strength is that you can put different modules in it.
Yeah.
Now the Syn 2 came out first. And then after we finished the Syn 2 project, Synergy came back and said, well, what do you think the next thing would be to do? And I said, well, you know, the only thing I could think of off the top of my head, and it was, some of the staff thought I was crazy for telling this, but you could make a single module desktop version of the Syn 2, call it Syn 1.
Yeah.
And they went, well, I don't know how practical it is, but we'll give it some thought. And they didn't really think it was a practical idea at first, and then they decided to run with it, and it turned out to be a practical idea. So but it still didn't have the IRs in it at the time, and it still didn't have the emulation of the output stage, the actual analog emulation of a tube amplifier output stage. Oh, well, we'll just do that in the digital domain. We'll make models of power amps. And like, okay, well,
Then
yeah.
we're like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Yeah, back in the digital domain.
Right. So we've just sort of been insulated from all of that part of the development by doing our development on making the GPDIR an enhancement of the GPDI, which was, it wasn't so much that the IR is in it. That wasn't the biggest part of the development. The biggest part of the development was giving the power supply more headroom.
So let's talk about that in a sec. I just want to clarify if I remember right, the original GPDI was released in 2016?
Yeah, 20.
And then how long did you produce that before it was kind of vaulted?
We produced them until we ran out of them. And I don't know, I think it was 16, 17, 18. I think it was right up to, I think it was right before COVID that the demand didn't stop, just the market went into freeze mode. And we had already built all of the GPDIs that we could make with the materials we had in inventory. So we were right at the point where, okay, well, we're ready to run another 500, 1,000 of them, or whatever the number was going to be, for the next quarter or whatever. We're starting to think about.
So ordering all the parts
All
again
parts.
And doing a whole other run.
Yeah. So that got put on hold because we had been talking about what we were going to do next with it in terms of producibility. They were kind of labor intensive to build.
Okay.
And so we wanted to make it a little bit more practical and functional and reliable of a build. We were having problems with pots kind of conking out and things
So
like that.
was there thinking that you would iterate on the original design just in terms of the production sense?
Yeah, we were just,
And you're
okay.
going to continue producing that iteration?
We were talking about what the next iteration was going to be. So are we going to build another batch of them as they are while we're working on the next version?
Yeah.
And then the shutdown answered that question for us.
And it gave you kind of a breather.
Yeah. So we decided to just, okay, put all of our effort into the updated version, and then if there's a world to sell them to after that point, we'll find that out soon enough. And that's
But in the
pretty much what
meantime,
happened.
it was power stations, the PS100, the
LX2,
PL,
right.
the power load, the PLIR, the LX2, a lot of the deliverance,
right.
all of that stuff was happening that
Yeah.
was kind of pushing the new GPDIR aside, right?
Right.
Okay. So now that we've gotten clear that, the reason for being was it was existing in that space where people were using modelers. You'd have this unit either loaded on your computer or a little pod looking thing, a little box on your desk, and you could just do your sessions there to your heart's delight. But all of a sudden Fryette says, okay, you can do that, but now you have a tube amp instead of a modeler, right? That's who it was built for. That was the prime reason for it being. So, but then it kind of disappeared from the market around just right before COVID. And then when you started rethinking it, let's get into what's different about the GPDI IR versus the original one. Clearly it has the IR loader in there, hence the name change, or the name add-on. But let's talk real briefly about what else is happening with this thing. What's different?
Well, the original power supply got pretty hot, and so it had a fan in there. The fan
Right.
wasn't for the tubes. The fan was for the power supply. and it got pretty warm, and people don't like fans. Nobody likes fans, but sometimes you have to have fans, and so it had a quiet little fan, but some people didn't think it was that quiet. And the problem we were having was the European units, the transformers weren't holding up very well. And the supplier that was making the power transformer for the domestic and the European ones were having business problems, and they weren't being responsive, and it was getting more difficult to get an order of transformers from them, and we were talking about shifting to another supplier. And at the same time, we were getting up to speed on switch mode power supplies, and I just thought, we could kill 3 birds on this one. We could get rid of the voltage conversion, having one version for Europe and one version for Japan and one version for the US.
That sounds awesome.
And we could it'd be one version.
Yeah.
And secondly, we could get rid of that big, stupid, temperature-inducing power transformer and use in a power supply that's 50% efficient, and replace it with a power supply that's 95% efficient. And with that kind of efficiency, that means the overall thermal buildup inside goes way, way down, and now it doesn't need a fan. So we killed the fan, we dealt with the supply issues, and we're no longer dependent on this flaky supplier for these transformers. And it reduced the weight a little bit.
It does.
So, what? It's a pound, maybe? A pound and a half?
But you notice it.
Yeah. Especially when you get older. It's like, oh, that's a little lighter. You feel it in a guitar.
I juggle mine every day.
You feel it in a guitar. You feel a pound and a half between 2 guitars.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you don't pick up the GPDI and go, whoa, throw it up in the air, but it is a little lighter.
I do with mine.
Well,
You don't do it with yours?
No.
You should try it sometime.
Probably. I would drop it, and then that would be one less that we'd have to ship to a customer, and then they'd be angry because they didn't get theirs in time.
All right, fair enough.
So, that was just all in having this nice functional, quiet package. It actually reduced the noise floor in the thing too, so it's much quieter, and more and more people are using this kind of recording scheme, recording in a small environment, recording at home, playing at very low volumes, and hearing all the little nuances that you never listened to before with big gear.
Yeah.
And hey, Mario, yeah, the video driver card is giving us some problems, so it's a little cloudy. Sorry about that. Where was I?
The transformer changed everything.
It
Big game changer.
just changed everything. It gave us, along with the efficiency, it also allowed us to raise the plate voltage of the tubes. And it isn't a lot. It's probably 30 volts, but in a preamp stage and a small power amp stage, 30 volts is a lot. That's like a 25% increase.
Can we talk about what that means?
Well, for example,
How does a regular guitar player...
in a big amplifier,
Yeah.
you normally have a 250 to 300 volt supply going to the preamp tubes. And then in the GPDI, it was more like more like 250, 230 to 250. In the Synergy, in the Syn 2 and the Syn 1 and the Syn 2, it's in the mid twos. And what that means is that the tubes don't have as much dynamic range. They're not as responsive. They don't have as much spank. They don't have as much depth. They just sound a little bit more compact.
Does that, how does that affect headroom?
Well, it's less headroom.
Okay, yeah. So everything is...
Everything is just squished down.
Yes.
So in trying to get a clean sound, especially in the GPDI, it was you could get a clean sound out of it, but you have to keep the volume very, very low to get it.
Right.
Because the output stage would clip too soon.
Right.
And so it was a little bit more of a challenge to get it to be clean. And I don't know how you if you struggled with that, or if you dealt with it, or if it even mattered. But I would.
It was definitely a dance with the master and the volume control in the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say you probably had.
You're not doing it all in the amp,
right?
You know, but it worked for me for 9 years.
I mean, that's what I basically did. Well, you know, we're not depending on this thing to be a high power unit, so it doesn't really have to have that much headroom. You create the headroom by putting it into your DAW and just turning up the level in your interface higher so that it sits in the mix at a higher level. And then, like you said, it's sort of a workaround.
Yeah.
But in this case, having more plate voltage in the very first stages and in the very last stage, you can turn it up to where it's actually the same volume and the same dynamic range as an actual anything like a 30, 50, 100 watt guitar amp. It has the same voltage in the preamp stages and therefore the same headroom, and so the controls all operate more like a much bigger amplifier. So it basically just scaled everything up a little bit. And
boy, did I notice that.
You noticed it right away.
Showing me the prototypes.
So I brought a prototype over to Joe's studio that was literally a bunch of boards all hanging off of each other. Wasn't even
alligator clips.
Yeah, it wasn't even in a housing. It was just like all spread out on the table, and so he's like, I said, okay, you plug it in over here, and the output is this jack laying on the floor over here, and so we got it all hooked up, and he plugged it in, and he just looked at me like I hit him in the face with a pan. Really funny. He just went, "What the hell just happened?" And
well, you did hit me in the face with a pan.
Yeah,
do you remember that part?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Man.
But I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday either, so that's not unusual.
Well, you hit me in the face with a pen, and then we played the GPDI. So that's what that look was for. And Bates, the original GPDI, it's not that it was not meant for clean, it's just that that's not what it did best. There just wasn't a ton of headroom available in that unit. The GPDIR is another story. But I digress. I shouldn't have done that. We're going to answer questions later on.
Good comeback, Mark. Boomer says, fans suck. Mark says, only on one side. I like that.
So
I'm a sucker for a good comeback. Well, yeah. So the issues that I really wanted to address within the context of a low watt little amp like that was that I wanted the behavior to be like an amp much bigger than it seems to be.
And the transformer allowed you to get into that.
Power supply allowed us to get into that. And being free from all the production complications of having 3 different production streams for different markets.
So I like how we're talking about this right now purely from, I mean,
practicality standpoint.
Well, also, this is stuff that you would talk about with a regular guitar amplifier. We're not talking about all the doodads and all the add-ons and stuff yet, right? Like the big thing that happened at the beginning of this clean sheet of paper is you have this new transformer or power supply that enables you to get it to sound and feel differently because it's an amp. It's an amp. The bells and whistles, they're going to come later, but it's an amplifier, and we're looking at it as a single channel amplifier with 3 different modes that just feels and sounds amazing. I just feel like I have to keep hammering that, because when I see people talking about the GPDI online, there's a lot of, I don't quite know what the hell it is. What is this thing again? What's it doing? And man, it's an amplifier. It's just a tube amplifier.
Yeah, I noticed that on Henning's video. A lot of people responded that I'm waiting for this supposedly comparable product that was a modeler, and another person says, well, I'm waiting for the next thing, blah, 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 to come out and compare it to that, when that product is also a modeler. And Henning keeps going back and dude, you're talking about an entirely different product. And he had to go back. He didn't really have to, but he took the effort to go through the comments and go, this is not comparable to that for all the reasons I discussed in the video.
Yeah.
But of course, he understands that not everybody watches the video from beginning to end, and so you miss a lot of details. But
and you know, I gotta say, like JDW 2150, I think, is saying that they do shows with an Axe FX and a PS1A, and we're not saying. I don't ever want it to be taken like modelers are ass and they have no place. And it's like, man, if you like modelers and you're getting what you want out of them, that's wonderful.
As Henning pointed out, and we have said time and time again, and people actually are understanding what we're talking about when we say this now, is that the modeler thing is all about the convenience and the workflow.
But they can sound great too. I hear people who are using them
But
and they
you
sound
can't.
great.
It isn't convenient and good for workflow if it doesn't sound good. So that just goes without saying that if they sounded like shit, the convenience and the workflow wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
So they do matter. They do make getting work done efficient, and they do make touring less expensive and less painful.
Absolutely.
And all of these things, sure, great. And so they do have this reason to exist.
100%.
They're just not going to do this thing.
Right. And if you're looking at the trade-off, and if you're like me, I believe there's a trade-off. And I want to make that bargain. You know, I'm choosing that solution. And if somebody else chooses to have a Kemper on their desk, then that's great, if that's what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I'm saying. I just wanted to bring it back to that. So, like I was saying, the new power supply allowed you to turn this thing that originally was a 1-watt recording amplifier into, holy shit, like it's doing a lot more amp stuff.
And you know what's
than the
really
original
funny
was.
about all that is it's still the same 1 watt output.
Uh,
The higher voltage did not increase the output power. Now this is going to get a little insider. The GPDI is 1 watt, and the preamp tube that does the 1 watt power section, living above the 12th, is asking the question, is the 12DW7 the power tube? Yes, it is. Half of it is, actually.
that's what Mark said. Mark's got
And in order to get the original GPDI up to in the neighborhood of 1 watt, it had to be biased really hot. And that's the only reason that tube survives in the GPDI is because of the fan. The fan the fan is primarily there to keep the power supply cool, but it did allow the 12DW7 to survive in there under higher than normal bias conditions. So it's running hot in order to get that much power. The GPDI IR, same circuit, same transformer, higher voltage, but it's biased a lot cooler, which actually gives it more dynamic range.
makes sense. That's
So
You're
the
not
power
paying out
output it didn't increase, but the tube's operating point cooled off and allowed for a greater responsiveness when you're playing clean stuff to get a nice sine wave swing out of it. So that was how that overall, it gave it a bigger presentation and a little bit more thump on the bottom end, a little clarity on the top, but it didn't increase the output. Maybe
It went like this.
yeah. I mean, it
Dynamic-wise.
increased the output power like maybe 1/8 of a watt or some stupid thing like that. Where the tubes really benefited from the higher plate voltage was all the preamp tubes downstream.
Oh, interesting.
So, and also we were able to, this is tech talk, but we were also able to decouple use a little bit more effective decoupling between stages going downstream, because we have a little extra voltage to throw away. The coupling, the decoupling method of the power supply, sending the voltages to the subsequent tubes downstream, there is some loss of plate voltage there. So if you have more to begin with, you have sort of more to throw away.
All right.
So again, that didn't make everything run hotter so much. It just gave the whole thing more definition, more separation, and more dynamics.
Well, it feels to me like all of the tone shaping controls, like the original GPDI, again, I used it for 9 years. I made most of my money using that. So I love it. But compared to the new GPDI, it feels a lot more tame.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah.
And so I find it fascinating that within the GPDI IR, you really didn't change the layout or the controls. It's the same stuff, because the new design with the new power supply, that's the tweak.
Yeah,
that's the tweak, really.
It just,
and now
it just scaled it up more into the zone of what a guitar player who's really well versed and experienced in using tube guitar amplifiers would experience, which is, oh, this is closer to what I'm used to.
yes, yeah,
It's as simple as that.
yeah.
Oh, I can do the things that I normally do with a guitar amp because it's behaving more like I'm used to.
Yeah, right.
And I noticed that right away. I thought, geez, if all this thing had was a clean channel, it would have been beneficial for that alone. And the other thing is having that extra detail and character.
Yeah,
The master volume works better because you can turn the master volume down to where you're not trying to just get volume out of the thing. You can turn the master volume down enough to where the output stage is staying clean, but the preamp stages are all gained out, and it sounds like a much more realistic master volume amp.
right. Yeah,
gain
that's what I was
mode.
going to say. And you can utilize that control more, not more like, just like
yeah.
a larger amp.
Yeah, I noticed again, going back to the Henning video, he did make a point of saying something about, it was all in a very positive context, but he pointed out that you could use the deep switch to kind of flatten out the bottom end if it gets a little bit too tubby when you're really pushing it. And I was watching that, and I could hear that he was getting that flubby thing, but I also noticed that he had the master volume up at around 11 o'clock. And anybody that's played a master
And he also
volume
had his
amp,
bass up higher.
yeah,
The bass control
Yeah.
up higher, I think.
yeah, and anybody that knows anything about playing a master volume amp knows that if you start pushing the output stage, it gets a little flubbier, and so you turn the master volume down to keep it in the power amp in that
Oh, man.
cleaner realm.
When you're saturating the power section, the bass control gets dumped.
Yeah.
To me, that's, I mean, not criticizing him, but like that's always been like rule number one.
Right.
You know, for me, or like I
Right.
wind up in like farty awful zone real fast.
And he also said that he didn't like the Pitbull voicing as much as the Deliverance voicing. But the interesting thing is the Pitbull voicing does roll off the low end at the input stage a little bit, and ups and jacks up the upper mid gain a little bit. But the way he had the gain 1 and gain 2 settings set, that would make it too top end forward if he'd have turned the gain 1 up more and the gain 2 down,
Yeah.
and the master volume down, and then just brought the level up on the DAW to where he wanted it to be. He would have nailed it. He was right on the edge. Like, all you had to do is just this and this and
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and you would have been home. But of course,
But I would. Oh, go ahead.
by the way, he said he decided that he's keeping it.
Oh.
So in about a month or two, he's gonna send an email that goes, "I get it now."
See, and
You
I
know
was
what
going to
mean?
say, to his defense, he reviews a lot of gear, so he's going through a lot of stuff
Oh yeah,
fast, and I'm sure he didn't have a ton of time to work with it. And the thing about the GPDI, again, like there's this what do I want to say? Not a tendency. There's this. What is it? There's this inclination towards. Oh, it's a little box. I'm going to think about it like a modeler. Oh, when I go into that mode, it should immediately give me these particular results. But I think the important thing is to remember it's a tube amplifier.
Yeah. And you play it like one.
Yeah, and just like, you think about the boogies with multiple modes. You think about any amp that's sharing circuitry across these different modes. We all know, oh, no. You can't think of them the same. When you go into that mode, you have to,
No, you just look at the front panel, and you look at just the bottom row. Only pay attention to the bottom row. Don't even look at what's above the bottom row yet. You just need to look at the bottom row. And then when you get that nailed, then you can go play with the cab sims and the IRs and figure out what they do. But that's not what people do. People just jump in. They don't read the manual. They just dive in and they start doing this and that. And then they send emails or they go on the support forum, which is forum.fryet.com, by the way, if you have questions. And ask these questions. Well, when I set this, when I do this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we get that from people. We got a guy that's posted somewhere that, well, the Deliverance isn't as clean as the new Deliverance 2 Plus isn't as clean as the original old OG Deliverance was. Why is that? And I don't know yet because he didn't say how he was setting the controls, but I know how nicely it does clean, and I know how you have to set it to get it to do that, and it's not like a big stretch or anything, but you definitely do have to turn the master volume up pretty high, and that's the reason that it has a solo volume.
Right.
So that you can get away with turning the gain way down
Les.
and turn the master volume way up and use your guitar volume, and you will get there. And as far as how you do that with a traditional clean amp, you don't play a humbucker guitar with the volume and tone all the way up into a Fender Twin and say, I don't know, it sounds kind of crunchy. There must be something wrong with it. Well, nobody plays a Twin that way or a Fender that way.
And I wanted to make the point that the way I think about the GPDI is I think of it like it's a Deliverance. Single channel amp with different modes. That's the way I see it. And it's easy for me to think. That's why I get along so great with the Deliverance. It's like, I was actually using this before I started using.
Yeah, it's all about understanding how it works. Like Paul Jackson Jr., he sets for his clean sound.
Yeah.
He uses Pitbull mode.
Interesting.
He goes, oh yeah,
you can do that.
He said, yeah, the best clean sound out of this thing is when you put it in Pitbull mode. I'm like, get out of here. But he figured it out.
He would know.
He would know. So I just like,
well, we need to bring him.
Yeah, we need to have him talk about how he does. He's got very specific ideas of not only how you play clean, but how you play funk, and it's really funny.
He's the best.
Because
he's the best.
Because his attitude and his philosophy is the problem with people trying to play funk is that they're trying to play funk. And they're trying too hard, and they won't just relax and get in the groove. They're trying too hard to be funky.
Yeah.
And of course that leads to failure. So that's why he knows.
Kind of what we were talking about earlier about thinking, getting in your head. Yeah. You get into trying. Okay, I'm going to be funky now. No, you're not. No, you're awful.
No, you're going to be the antithesis of funky.
Yeah, you're funky, all right. Get the hell out of here. Yeah. So, all right, we're talking about the sonic and tactile difference between the two models. We've talked quite a bit about that. Let's talk now about the new bells and whistles and the things that differentiate this from the original GPDI.
Okay.
Clearly, the IR loader is the main headline.
Right.
And we've been talking about IRs, and nobody's chimed in saying, what's an IR? So I think everybody watching knows what those are. I will say that when I was using my GPDI all those years, I was just loading IRs in my DAW. I would use, what was it called? Space Designer in Logic. You can just load impulse responses, and I had a whole slew, a whole folder full of those things. And that's how I would run my GPDI. The same package of IRs that is shipped with the GPDIR, it's the same package that Fryette ships with the PLIR that our friend Michael Nielsen created. This killer pack of Fane and Eminence speakers loaded in Fryette and Sound City cabs. They sound amazing. I got that pack with the PLIR. I've had that on my computer, so I was actually using those IRs for a couple years with my original GPDI exclusively before the GPDIR dropped. So that just became the easiest thing in the world for me. Now I don't load them in my DAW anymore. Now it's just on board. And I don't use any other IRs. I haven't. I just use those 4 in the front bank. That's it.
I think the thing about IRs is there are these expectations that are glommed onto IRs because they're supposed to represent a particular speaker.
It's just the whole modeling kind of thinking, right?
And the problem with that is they only behave the way you would expect them to, is if the amplifier that is creating the sound into the reactive load that it's creating the sound into is good enough to then have that signal sent, be processed through the IR, and actually have a ghost of a chance of sounding like a real cabinet. And again, it's not about which cabinet. And that's why we went out of our way not to use anything really familiar like Celestions, because we don't use Celestions in our amplifiers anyway. And I don't ever feel like we've lost anything by not doing that. We've always
Clearly.
we've always had something that we liked, that we designed, that worked for our amplifiers, and it started out with the Eminence, and then it evolved into the Eminence and the Fane, and the Fane speakers that we have developed in conjunction with Fane have given us every single thing that we've ever needed our speakers to do in our amplifiers. Things that we asked Celestion to do for us, and that was not forthcoming, but it was with Fane, and that's why we use Fanes. So it goes back to what you your expectations as a player, what you're used to and what works for you. It isn't about what it says on the label or what the number is, because everybody knows that a Vintage 30 is not a 30-watt speaker. And a G12H30 is actually more like a 50-watt speaker, and a G12M is basically a 25-watt speaker that you can push harder depending on the enclosure that it's in, and all those things. Great. Each speaker has 2 components: the reactive component and the frequency component. And
so the feel and the sound.
Yeah, and the
roughly.
reactive component is the parts of the speaker physically moving around.
Yeah, that you're reacting against.
Yeah, and those characteristics are very similar across all guitar speakers. They're not radically different.
Okay.
They're subtly different. And the same goes for the frequency response. But of course, with Celestions, the upper mid bite is more.
It's part and parcel to its thing.
Yeah, it's more out. It's more out front.
Yeah.
Then the Fanes. The Fanes could make speakers that are more out front in that regard.
Do you remember?
We didn't ask them to do that.
Yeah. When Nielsen was creating those IRs, he was saying, "Hey, just so you know, like, check out this Fane speaker." He's like, "Look what I did with the EQ. I bumped it here." He's like, "Compare it to this Celestion IR. It's dead nuts."
Right.
Like, so you take the Fane, you give it that upper mid, little spike, and
I forgot about that. He actually was playing around with getting a really well dialed in IR, and then he just went, I wonder what would happen if.
Yeah.
And so he looked at the curves on the speakers, and he went boop, and all of a sudden he goes,
Hey Mo, look at this.
that's all I really needed to hear.
Yeah.
So it's how it's an IR is entirely dependent on the behavior of the amplifier that the speaker is reproducing the sound of.
And the load that's
Yeah. So that's the thing that I think if you stop obsessing about what type of speaker is in it, which is what people do, and that's why there's 8 million speaker packs out there, and then you have to go through 275 speakers before you find the one that you want to use for today's session. To me, that's the definition of insanity. Don't you want to just turn it on, set a setting,
Yes.
go whang,
Yes.
and okay, there's my rhythm track. Boom, I'm done. Now what do I want to do?
Angel X, that's exactly it. Option paralysis.
Yeah, and I
100%,
get
man.
that worse than anybody.
Oh,
I
well, we all do.
I go to Art's Deli, and they've got that 14-page menu, and I'm just like, just bring me a tuna melt before I have an emotional crisis. So the IR loader part of it is only valid in the context of having a real guitar tube power amplifier driving a reactive load before it gets to the IR. And that means, people ask, is there any way that I can plug a head into the reactive load in the GPDIR and have it work that way? No, because the reactive load in the GPDI is designed for a 1-watt amplifier.
It's not the reactive load in the power station.
No. I mean, that's a reactive load for a big amplifier is physically big components. You plug the output of a 50-watt amp into the reactive load in here, and it'll just be like 4th of July. There'll be just parts shooting off the board. So that's not practical. But this is all about scale. But the point is that the behavior of the power amp is the important thing that makes the speaker what it is. And so that's what makes the IR what it is. So it doesn't matter if you have a Celestion Vintage 30 IR or a Fane or a warehouse speaker or whatever your favorite IR is, it's going to behave differently depending on what signal source that you send to it in the first place. And of course, if you've got an actual real tube power amplifier powering a little reactive load that behaves a certain way, that is complementary to whatever IR that you're using, then you're going to be home free and you're not going to be stressing out so much about which actual IR that you're using. And we've found that a whole bunch of times when we were playing into the stream or experimenting with stuff. It's like, well, try that one. We'll try that one. We're only switching back and forth between 4 different IRs.
Yeah.
And in about 3 minutes, we were at the point where, holy shit, it doesn't matter. Just use one because it doesn't really matter which one.
Yeah, or it'd be like, no, the second one sounds best. Do the second one. Okay, cool. I'm not looking. And then a couple minutes later, I look over, and I'm thinking, this sounds awesome. And I'm like, oh, you didn't change it.
Yeah.
Okay, who gives a damn?
Play games like that all the time.
Yeah, right?
All right, so then from the GPDI to the GPDIR, it became, since it's evolving a certain way, and I think that we want to direct that evolution towards the people that are actually going to be using it the way it's about 80% already designed to be used. So let's just take it all the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And so in that conversation, what would make a little thing like this just the whole toolbox? And what are people asking for? Well, and then is there anything else? So we started out by saying, well, okay, we can, now that we have more headroom in the power supply, we can put an effects loop between the preamp and the power amp, because that was the problem with the original one. It didn't have enough headroom. If you put something in the effects loop, say, yeah, I put my delay in the effects loop and it sounds kind of distorted.
Yeah.
You know, you would hear that didn't have the openness that it would needed to have. So that's why we didn't do it in the first place. So we were able to put that in there. And since we were able to put that in there, it was an easy step to say, well, why don't we just incorporate the add a amp feature on that, since that's all part of the effects loop function anyway, so we can just
Add an amp.
add an amp.
Let's take that off ramp. Let's talk about add an amp.
All right. Well, the add a amp thing came up when we were doing the Sin 1 and the Sin 2, which is, that was more, for that project, that was more about adding bullet points
Okay.
to the product,
Oh, okay.
because it was a new product, and they're trying to figure out what's all the things that we can make this thing do. How many different hoops can we get it to jump through?
All right.
And there was a lot of space in there to work with, and so that seemed like a sort of an easy consensus to, yeah, that would be a cool thing if we could get it to do that. And it turned out to be pretty easy to do, so we did it. And so for this,
But let's define that. What is an add an amp?
what it really is doing is it's taking the preamp section of the amp that you have that has an effects loop in it,
So like a deliverance,
or whatever, a Fender amp that's got a loop, or whatever.
or does the Friedman Jose does that have a loop? I don't know,
sure
but
it must.
the Sig X, you know, the
Right.
two new amps in the
Right.
chat today. So
So if you have an amp that has, and you just want to add flavors to it, you can get those flavors out of the preamp section of the GPDI and inject that into your external amplifier. The really cool thing about it is having the effects loop in the GPDI means that you put your effects in the GPDI effects loop. And that effects loop replaces the effects loop in the amp that you're using the GPDI with. So now both the GPDI preamp and the external preamp, when you're external mode, route back through the effects loop and then send that back to the amp. So you have a reverb that you're using for
oh, thanks Braxel. Good
both
confirmation.
both of the functions of the GPDI, and say, for example, you have your external amp is a 2-channel amp that's got a nice lean sound and a pretty crunch sound, but not a great overdrive.
Well, how many times did I ask you, hey, is there any way you could put 90% of the GPDI preamp in a pedal for me?
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
that's
pretty
the
much,
solution,
That's
yeah.
pretty much the
Yeah.
solution for that. So that was just like, okay, well, that's a no-brainer. We have room for that. And then I started thinking that, well, I'd started having a conversation with Joe Barisi, and he was on a roll about reampers, and he was honestly bitching and moaning about reamp products
Oh,
and how
that's
much.
right. I remember I loaned you guys one of my boxes, and he had custom boxes, and you guys were gonna party over listening to every reamp box.
Yeah, we listened to a
imaginable.
bunch, and we're like going, this is what everybody's talking about? This is what all the hoo-ha is about? This is just like a pretty, it's not such a voodoo thing. It's just knowing how guitar pickups behave under certain loaded conditions, and what the just sort of the general signal levels that you're dealing with, and then making something that accommodates that. And at first I heard so many people yakking about reamp boxes and this guy's version and that guy's version,
Yeah.
and we're not going to talk about how.
It was
You know-
just as nerdy as Tube Screamer variations.
Yeah,
Like, oh
and
my
there
God.
really wasn't as much to talk about as all the things that people were talking about. And I just thought, you know, just one good, functional, well-constructed, well-engineered reamp configuration would be nice. And the original GPDI was sort of set up in my mind, to do that. But Barisi was the guy that said, yeah, I tried it, and it really didn't work that hot. And I think that that's why he started talking to me about his boxes. And he said, well, but his approach was kind of funny. It was like, well, let me send you 2 or 3 reamp boxes that, by the way, I also hate, but they work a little bit better than what the GPDI is doing.
Joe's hilarious.
Yeah. So I said, oh, all right. Well, thank you for that qualification. That sort of takes the edge off. You know,
He should come on the show again.
yeah. It took some of the intimidation factor out of it. So I went, all right. And then once we realized what we were talking about, I just went, oh, well, this is going to be kind of a no-brainer. It was really funny. One of the ones that he had, he really liked the sound of it. And we listened to it, and I thought, well, you know, it's got some interesting characteristics. I don't know if it's all that practical, but I understand that he has this one particular tool in his toolbox that he's going to use under certain circumstances. So we checked it out, and we gave it back to him. And one of the things that we're giving it back to him is the level knob on the box. So I tightened the set screw on that, and I set it so that it had a little pointer on it. So I set it so that when you turn it all the way to 0, the pointer was sort of pointing to 0, like you would expect.
Yeah.
Right? So I set it so that it's pointing the right way, tightened the set screw, gave it back to him, and he called me the next day. He goes,
What did you do?
what did you do to my box?
I didn't know about this. We never talked about this.
And I said, what do you mean? He goes, it's the level is all different now. Did you change something? It's like the magic is all gone. I'm like, no, I didn't change anything. And he's going, it's way off, man. I got to bring it back and figure out what you did. And I went, Joe, the knob was really loose, so I tightened the set screw on the knob. So I set it so that when you turn it all the way to left, it's at 0. And he goes, I don't think that's it. And I said, I'm sure that that's it, but come on over. I'll have a look at it. Well, he thought about that for a while, and then he messed around with it, and then he turned that knob until he found its sweet spot again, because he's all about the sweet spot. He's got a what's the mic pre,
Yours?
the one that this is not a clone of, the real one,
The Neve?
the Neve 11 something or other.
Oh, I don't know.
I always forget this. It's the 1173. Yeah. He's all about the clicks on the Neve.
Oh, man.
He doesn't even refer to it in terms of dB 1073. Thank you, Braxel. He doesn't even think of it in terms of how many dB signal level is going in and is coming out. He just goes, I turn it a couple of clicks until it's at its sweet spot, and it's different for everything that I plug into.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he doesn't really think of it in terms of what is mechanically correct. He operates in terms of what sounds good to him and what feels right. He's entirely intuitional in that way. A lot of people just don't know nothing about the knobs. They just know it's right or it's not right, or somewhere in between. And he's one of those guys. So he fiddled around with it. He goes, "So I got it back to where it was." And I said, "Well, what did you do?" And he says, "Well, I just adjusted the knob until it was back to where it was, and then I marked it. I changed where I marked it on the box so that it's the same." So he finally understood that all I did was just physically move the knob on the pot and tightened it down.
Mm-hmm.
So then he turned the pot to find where it behaved the way he liked it previously, and then marked that new spot, and he was all done with it.
Yeah.
But that was a real learning experience for me. Anyway, long way around, I felt really comfortable that I understood the parameters of the reamp function and how to get the signal out of your interface into the GPDI, and then how to record a dry signal out of the GPDI onto a track, and then it would be a complete tool. And the only thing about putting that technology in there is the headphone amp in the old GPDI had to go. And nobody thought twice that wasn't a good idea to get rid of that, because the part of it having the headphone output, well, it was only good. The headphone output is only good for most people that are getting overdrive sounds that wanted to use it for private practice with headphones. It would be only worthwhile if you put an IR loader in the headphone loop, right?
Yeah.
And
I never used that.
so
function
you
once.
never used it, and lots of people never used it. So probably 80% of the people, when they found out the headphone amp was going to be gone, they went, "Oh, really? It's got a headphone amp in it?" You know, it was
Right.
that kind of thing. And
I remember you called me. I was, I think, on the East Coast, and I think you and Julian were having the discussion.
we were discussing it, right?
And you're like,
It was a
okay,
pretty
what do
big-
you think
we
of
were
this?
Taking this, we were taking that whole idea really seriously, because we thought it would move it into a much more functional realm if we did that. But we wanted some feedback from people, and so I called Joe at like, it was probably 2 a.m. in New York.
No,
I didn't even know where he was. I just called and he answered. So
no, I was excited when you had that idea. Like, okay, you might be disappointed. You might have to lose the headphone amp for this. Like, okay.
yeah,
What?
Yeah, next.
Yeah. A reamp? Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that turned
So-
out turned out to work really well. And of the 3 people that actually did reviews on it, that actually tested that feature, their reaction was, "That's a no-brainer. It's working just like it's supposed to, so it's perfect. I don't have anything more to say about it. I don't have to criticize it. I don't have to talk about what it sounds like, because it's just doing what it's supposed to do,
Yeah,
and that's the end of
yeah,
it."
yeah.
Which is what we were hoping was going to be the reaction. But you never know the way people sort of, like, you know, over glorify certain,
Sure,
go
sure.
down rabbit holes and stuff. Like, you just like, that's why I called you. Is like, geez, this is something that should be an absolute no-brainer, but some people could, you know, make a big deal out of it. Well, it turned out that they didn't, and it turned out that it worked great. So that's the whole package. I think that's everything that.
Yeah, so we talked about the new power supply,
Yeah.
which really changes.
See, to me,
improves.
that's the most. Are we really at an hour and 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Holy shit! How did we
Turning
get?
along
I haven't even finished my first drink yet.
with our potato dubbed
Ah.
version, so we're gonna have to do.
So the
Kind of dropped on our end. Sorry about the technical stuff tonight, guys. Yeah, the feel and the dynamic range of this amplifier is palpable.
Mm.
And that's all I wanted. I was already using IRs in my DOS. I mean, that's an added convenience, you know. But I haven't used the other stuff yet, and I'm going to be doing videos for it, so I get to get into to deeper territory with this. But let's recapitulate what we talked about so far. So there's the new power supply, which changes the character of the amplifier. Really, 100% in the direction I think everybody will like, unless you really appreciate like that more controlled, tame characteristic of the original one, which, you know, it wasn't a stereo amplifier by any means, but this one is just bigger all the way around. So you feel like you have a lot more to work with. So we have that, we have the effects loop, we have the IR loader, we have the reamp function, and then we have the add an amp function. Did we cover everything?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, great.
The foot switchable
Yeah.
foot switchable loop and foot switchable more or less mode.
Yeah. So again, that's very Deliverance-esque to me, again, which is why I keep saying I really conceptualize this just like using a Deliverance. So here's the thing. I'm was I going to say? I'm not sure that the audio thing is happening enough tonight to really get into playing it. So since we're running low on time, maybe we should back up and answer some people's questions.
Yeah.
And then we can do more playing stuff in shows coming up.
Should we work backwards from the most recent, since it's easier to...
Well, I got the whole thing. I'm at the top of the show right here.
All right.
So let's see. All right.
I'll try to make it really concise.
Oh, remember when we did this speed running questions before?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, speed round.
Yeah, all right. I had the GPDIR added to the Memphis and the SIGEX last night. Can I add the power station PS100 to the amp and the GPDIR?
Yes, but you need the Cyclops to do it right. Let's see. Wait a minute. I had the GPDR added to the Memphis and the SIGEX. Can I add the power station PS100 to the amp and the GPDR? Yeah, you will do it a little differently. You will actually use the you'll use the Cyclops box and yeah, you'll need the Cyclops box because you're going to want to have the GPDI running, and then you're going to first of all, you use the Cyclops to add a preamp to the amp going into the power station. Sorry, I'm visualizing the signal path in my head. I was trying to think, do you really need the Cyclops to do that? If you want to do the add an amp feature and switch between the Cyclops or the GPDI and the SIGEX preamp or whatever, or the Memphis preamp, if you want to do both those things, you need the Cyclops, and then you'll connect the GPDI to the Cyclops and use that in the loop of the power station. So that's the way you will switch between the amps going through the effects loop of the power station, which then the effects that were in the power station would be managed by the Cyclops, so that the power station effects loop would then become the effects for the GPDI and the SIGEX and or the Memphis.
Well, okay.
I did all that without looking at it.
I know, that's why I'm okay, we're speed round. Steve, are you gonna make something like the 2 notes reload 2 where you can run 2 amps?
Okay, you can't run 2 amps with the reload 2. You can run 2 cabs with it, but you can only run 1 amp. So you plug your amplifier into the reactive load input of the reload 2, and then it sends that signal to a stereo effects loop, which is only in a stereo effect loop if you put in a stereo effect in it. Otherwise, it's a dual mono effects loop. And then run that out to 2 cabs. So the only way that you can run 2 amps into the reload 2 is to have an amp switcher that switches between the amps that go into the input. That is not the way that I envision that being the ideal thing to do. And partly because that would be exactly the first question I would expect somebody to ask about that. And secondly, they're using a Class D power amp module, which is a stereo module, to power the speakers. And it's a 100-watt module, but it's only 100 watts at 4 ohms. It's 30 watts at 16 ohms. So it's not that powerful of an amp. And I see some people commenting that they like it better because they can turn it all the way down to 0. And if that's what you're doing with it, and if that's the only benefit of the Reload 2 for you, is that you could turn it down to where you can't hear yourself playing if people are talking, that may be a benefit to you, but it's not really the reason for the power station to exist. The power station's purpose is to maintain the feel and responsiveness of a cranked amp at the speaker cabinet that you're playing through. And I noticed on one of the forums where somebody said that they had, and I've been saying this, that you can't accomplish that with a Class D amp. You can't accomplish it with a Class AB amp. So what ideally you would want to do is, whether it's a Class D or Class AB amp, you would want to have that only for the wet sounds, right?
Yeah.
But then what about your dry sound, and what about the controllability of your dry sound? You don't have it. And even with a 2 amp switcher, you won't have that. So there is, we have been discussing that, and there is what we think is the right way to do that. And we're kind of, throwing basketballs off the wall on that one, and we'll be continuing to explore those ideas. But doing it with a solid state stereo power amp is kind of a no. It's a non-starter for me, because what happens between the power amp and the speaker is just important as what happens between the head and the reactive load, and those two pieces have to be part and parcel to the entire sound. And that's what I think. It's a nice looking product. It looks like it. It's a reputable company. It looks like they do what they do quite well. I don't think that's the solution that I would find the satisfying solution. It sounds like you're kind of checking your pros and cons boxes yourself. We all are, because there's definitely a next place to take that, and we're just trying to decide what combination of chocolate chips and sprinkles that we're gonna put on it, right?
Totally. I want to grab this one really quick right here. Sorry, I'm going out of order, but Kyle just asked this question. Is there a list of the individual IRs loaded on the GPDIR? Did you put it in the manual?
It's not in the manual's not complete yet, but it's in the PLIR manual.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. The complete list, because it's the same package. It's in the PLIR manual, which is available online. So I'm looking at it right now. I'd send it to you here if I could, but it kind of goes into great detail, even the mics that he used for this. So that's where you'll find that. Okay, now I have to go back and find. Gosh darn it, all the heck. Okay, here we go. Why didn't you make an IR loader with an attenuator? I have a 190 watt amp with a PS2 and a IR loader. Thank you for making the input 200 watts.
Yeah, we're getting more and more of that from people, which is great. That means more people are sort of getting what the whole concept is about and looking for an extension. We've sort of been waiting to see what kind of, the Power Station 2, the PS1 came out in 2016, 17, 16.
The power load?
Power Station.
Power Station?
The PS1.
Oh, the PS1.
It's been 10 years.
2016, 2017, right in there.
Yeah, so...
do you remember? No, I don't need another drink. Thank you.
I do.
Oh, all right.
Maybe I just need a little sparkling water in this one. Whoops. And I need a napkin now. For all of that time, people were just sort of catching up to us on the Power Station.
And learning what it does.
Is it
viable in the marketplace? All of that stuff.
And seeing what it's going to do for my life. And it's been a growing community, and it's been great. And then over the last couple of years, we've been starting to get, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And we have been watching that very carefully, and we've been formulating our ideas about where to go next with it. And the reason we haven't done anything so far is because there's so many interesting ways to approach it, and everybody wants everything all at once, all the time.
Don't you?
Of course. I want the sprinkles, I want the jujubes, I want the chocolate chips, and I want the syrup, and yeah, I won't be able to eat it when you're all done, but that's what I want. So there are a couple of ways to go. We have to be very careful with technology, because if you make a really practical, now and even the guys that at Two Notes that sort of acknowledge this, why they didn't put their IR loader, their very sophisticated IR loader in
Their flagship thing that they do.
Yeah. Why? Because they understand this one sort of essential thing, which is the one element that you put into the stew that has the most likelihood of obsolescence, the greatest likelihood of obsolescence, is going to be the thing that limits the lifespan of your product.
Sure.
Everything else can last 20 years, 30 years, but the IR loader is obsolete in 5 years.
Mm.
And that's the end of the product, the part that's no longer useful. And then you want to go back to the manufacturer, well, can't you just do updates, blah, blah, blah. Well, at a certain point, that's the problem with microprocessors and things like that, is they change. New ones keep coming out, and the manufacturers obsolete the old ones to the point where you can't even update them anymore. And the software is obsolete and it's not in use anymore. The connectors to connect the external software loaders to your computer become obsolete. It's insane. So when you talk about what can you jam into a single product, you have to be very aware of how long of a lifespan do I want this product to have.
Right.
And so what you're basically asking is, why didn't you make an IR loader with an attenuator? The real question is, why didn't we make the attenuator with an IR loader in it? And we haven't decided the best way to implement that yet. And just, I'm going to be using Two Notes to underscore our concern about that. They have a great IR loader, and even they decided that was a bridge too far for some reason.
It's interesting.
And so we'll see how that
Want
all
another
plays
drink?
out.
One's being visited upon you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, speed running.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark had a good question here. Full-size rack package versus smaller package difference aside. Driving a cab with 1 watt ignored, just functioning as a 0 watt amp, does the GPDI IR have any advantage over the GP3?
It has better output stage, even though you don't use it to drive a speaker. It is actually it's an entire amplifier that's driving the IR loader, not just the preamp part. That's really important. So over the GP3, the evolution of the output stage and the evolution of the power supply is what makes it a much more convincing, satisfying tube guitar amp playing experience. And so that's the advantage of the GPDIR over the GP3. It's just it's an evolution of the GP3, an improvement, a refinement.
Okay, wonderful. This is cool. Angel X asks, could you do a metal gig with the GPDIR and a power station? Hell yeah.
I would say so.
Oh, yeah.
There will be a volume limitation. Well, with the
No.
PS100 there wouldn't be.
No,
So
you're ready to go. I mean, especially, of course, we get into actual details. You know, what's the sound reinforcement situation like? You know,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. What size cab are you playing through and all of that business? But in theory, I think in the spirit that you're asking it, you could 100% do that.
Okay, you got to taste this.
All right. What happened? Oh, it looks different. So. Oh.
I don't know. It's just like I tasted it, I went, oh, everybody's got to try this. And don't ask me what it is, because I don't know yet. It's some kind of greyhound that I don't know.
I want
Seems like
that
it was invented by
next
somebody in
time,
Germany. Yeah,
please. That's
we're gonna have to come
really
up with a name for
something.
that. Yeah,
Oh yeah, it's the Malcontent.
yeah, the Malcontent
Wow.
greyhound.
got answered. Sorry, I'm
I like the last two. Yeah, right.
Sorry, I'm looking at these.
What is it? His name is Jonathan. Was it? What was that from? The Fight Club.
Oh, DS asking me a question. Am I running the Strymon Dig in the loop of the GPDIR? That's a good question. I'm not currently, and I hadn't thought about doing that. But now that I see that, I'm definitely going to try
Paulson,
that.
yeah, right.
The way I'm using it now, like with the previous GPDI, I was taking the amp out, the line out into the Strymon, and then splitting the stereo into my interface. So, yeah. And now it's like I'm taking the IR out of the GPDI IR out. So it's like the entire amp is being fed into it, almost like kind of like a rack rig almost. The amp is going into the effects, and then the effects into the interface. So that's just how I'm doing it now, because it was the easiest thing to do, and it works great. But yeah, I'm going to try it in the effects loop this week, and we'll see how that sounds. That's going to be fun. Thanks for the idea. Let's see. All right, have some of our friends answering questions.
There was a guy that asked about what happens if you add an amp add the GPDI to a boogie amp that had 6L6s. That was
Yep, I just found it.
Yeah. Giacomo.
Giacomo.
Is it Giacomo?
If I'm wrong, I'll be surprised. How will the GPDI behave into a Mesa effects loop with 6L6s compared to a PS2?
First of all, are we talking about a Mesa Mark amp? If we're talking about a Mark amp, the effects loops in those is not great. And the fact that it's a 6L6 amp and the PS2 is a 6L.
You are my friend.
The PS2 is a 6L6
I thought I was
amp.
gonna have to wait.
So the inference would be that they should sound the same because they're both 6L6 amps, but they're not the same thing because of the way Mesa configures their amplifier stage and their transformers and the way they treat the tubes. So
this is insane.
The good news is the GPDI is going to sound like it's more related to your Mesa when you use it that way, and it's going to sound more related to the power station when you run it that way. They're both going to be good. They're just going to be different. In the same way, the behavior of the Mesa amps is different than the behavior of our amps, for example, or another company, Marshall, for example. They're just going to be different because conceptually they're entirely different amplifiers. Not as much to do with the 6L6s, more to do with the overall execution. All right.
Nice. Well, there we go.
Did we get them all?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, here's one. Where to buy one?
Any place that is offering them for sale, you can get one. They may not be in stock right at the moment, but it's only because it's not because they're not going to have them. It's not because it's going to take a really long time to get it. It's just because they've sold through the stock and whatever we're shipping hasn't received back to their to their warehouse yet. But depending on where you're located, if you're in Europe, you'll be able to get one in 2 weeks. If you're in the UK, you'll be able to get one in a week to 2 weeks. If you're in the US, should be about a week or so. And I think Musician's Friend and American Music are getting their next shipments, and maybe Washington Music as well. We've been shipping like crazy. So you should be able to find them on any one of those sites.
Oh, and Yakumo has an Electrodyne. I had one of those.
I
man.
remember those.
I had one, and you know what? I liked it. That's a cool amp. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Mark has. Chris is asking, when are we going to start doing a 24-hour Malcontents stream? Okay, so if you carry through on your threat to make a GP3 IR, which we talked about on here.
You know what? A 24-hour marathon Malcontents might be bitching. We could do we could invite people and have a revolving cast.
Can I leave after 2 hours?
Oh, you're no fun.
All right.
So if you carry through on your thread
so
to make a GP3 IR, I wish its power amp simultaneous simulating was as good as the GPDIRs be a thing. If we were crazy enough to do a thing like that, the GPDI output stage would be the output stage that we would use because it works great.
Yeah.
We don't need to make a different one just because there's more channels. We potentially could, but we don't necessarily have to.
People are talking about this 24-hour stream, and maybe we could do we do it for charity because people are saying they take bets on when you would pass out. I'm the only one who ever kind of passed out on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, there wouldn't be much to bet on. I think that they'd be taking bets on what specific hour will Joe hit the floor. I think that would be more like it.
Like I was saying earlier, though.
I do like the idea of doing a benefit 24-hour benefit show for some cause.
And we could just have friends trucking in and, coming in, hanging.
Like for animal rescue organizations.
Remember the time we had a pizza delivered on the show? We'd have food coming in. That would be bananas.
Did we do that?
Yeah. Do you remember? We had the guy, he walked in the room.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
The pizza?
Yeah, our Spicola moment.
Yeah. That was fun. So look, the technical... you're replacing your computer next time?
I don't know. I'm doing all kinds of shit all the time.
Look, we are going to do the Tone Quest demo nonsense on the show when we're sure that we can represent the sound of this thing, at least semi-accurately. We're not going to chance at this time, and plus we're over the time that we planned on being on here. So we're going to let you all go. Get on. Ooh, look at that. Okay, this is nonsense. Knock it off, Freya. What? Stop it.
All right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. That's the idea.
Yeah.
We have our friends coming in and out. Yeah.
You get a car. You get an hour.
And any malcontents who want to fly into LA and come on the show and hang out with us, get your butts over here and we'll do it.
What's
That'd
the
be so
best way
fun.
to connect to a PC? USB cable.
All right, you ready? We're going to sign off. Are you done monkeying?
I'm almost ready. I'm almost ready. Okay, now I'm ready.
Guys, thanks for hanging out
Thank
with
you.
us.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
Take care of yourselves.
See you in a couple. All right, you guys. Take care. Cheers. Is this...